Today I'm going to do what I'm going to call an orgy of Cattleya repotting. I had saved a bunch of Cattleya pieces from when I divided up those big clumps of orchid in Cattleyas, and I was planning to pot them up as a demonstration for the Illinois Orchid Society at our July meeting. But unfortunately, our meeting was moved until next week, and I actually won't be in town because I have to go away on a business trip. So I thought that I would just do it as a video. I was supposed to explain like how I repot and why I repot in it, and I don't usually do that when I do my little video blogs. But one of the things is after I divided these Cattleya is I was waiting for them to start to put out roots. And Cattleya can be divided into two general groups. You have ones that root before bloom and ones that root after bloom. And what I have right here is a Cattleya skinneri, which is a root before bloom. So what that means is that when it puts out its new growth, like as you can see right here, it's going to put out roots at the same time, and then once the growth fully matures, it will put out a bloom. This is a piece that I divided from Orchid Inn, and then I have two more Cattleya trianae pieces. I think they're both trianae. One of them was a no ID because the tag was really almost impossible to read, but I'm going to try this as I think they're from the same pot or the same clump, and I'm going to try one in semi-hydro and I'm going to try one in bark. And also I'm going to repot a bunch of my Sunset Valley Orchid Cattleyas today. I liked, if I don't know if I want to keep something or if something is a bifoliate, then I usually pot it in bark nowadays instead of into semi-hydro. I really found that for the bifoliates that need to be warm, that it's a little bit too cold in the winter where I keep my orchids for the bifoliates, and so they tend to like really suffer and die in the winter, or they make it through the coldest parts, and then right when it starts to get warm, they all just fall over and die. So the skinneri, which is a bifoliate, as you can see right here, it's, you know, it's kind of dry. It has lots and lots of these roots right here, these aerial roots. And I actually just took this piece, none of this was actually in the pot. I didn't have to like unpot it per se. I just cut it off the plant, and then I waited for the new roots, as you can see right here, to start coming out. And so this is time for it to be repot now. It really can't wait any longer. And there are videos or instructions out there that with Cattleyas, if you're going to put them in the semi-hydro or you're going to repot them, you should cut all the old roots off. And I don't like to do that because Cattleyas like to climb, and so I usually leave the roots so that I can basically weigh them down with the bark or the semi-hydro, and this just helps keep them in the pot. So first thing I need to do with this, this one I'm gonna pot it up. Like I said, Skinneri is one of the parents of Guatemalensis, and my Guatemalensis really just do much better when they're potted than in semi-hydro. The other parent for Guatemalensis is Aurantiaco, which I do have in semi-hydro, but I've noticed that the ones that I have in bark actually just grow a little bit faster and better. So first thing I'm gonna do is just fit this into a pot. Hopefully everyone can see this. So this pot's a little bit small because of how big the pieces and the Cattleya is growing, the skinneri is growing linearly. So I'm probably going to end up pushing it this way to give it as much pot grow room as possible. If I wanted it to split, I'd have to basically back cut it to get it to split out in another direction. One of the things you can do with Cattleyas like this is once you get them to grow in the pot, you can get them to curve along the pot and grow back. And so maybe I could get that to happen with this one. I am going to be repotting into a bark mix. I buy it from Hauserman's. I also sometimes mix my own. It's basically perlite and sphagnum moss and fir bark. And so I have a big bag of it. And it actually used to be quite cheap. I think it used to be you could get like a 40-gallon bag, like a huge bag of it for like $10. I don't know what they sell it for now, but it's not very expensive. And you know, like I find it very suitable for Cattleya in my environment. It's the sphagnum moss is supposed to help keep in the water. The perlite's supposed to make it a little bit airier, but mostly in the summer, it's probably a little bit too water retentive, but in the winter when it's really dry here and it's really cold, then I find that it's really good in the winter. And the winter's a little bit longer here in the summer, so that's why I use it. The thing about semi-hydro in the winter here is it gets down to about 50 degrees in my grow area, and the clay pellets, the leca, just gets really, really cold. And so what'll happen is the tips of my roots will just turn black where they touch the clay pellets because it's so cold. And I don't find that happens in bark. Now, the roots that I've left in here are going to probably die off, but I'm not having them here. I don't have these roots in here because they're gonna do a lot for the plant, right? That's what the new roots are gonna do. They're just in here to help keep the plant inside. If you cut all the roots off, then you have to use rhizome clips, and your Cattleyas have a tendency to fall out of the pot. So I'm just using another pot to scoop it out of the bag. And I can do it by hand, but the fir bark tends to have a lot of splinters in it. And so I'm probably going to end up putting on gloves a little bit later just to protect my hands from the splinters. I don't press down really firmly to make it tight because I want the mix to be really airy. I just want it in there enough to keep the plant from falling out. So the goal here isn't to, like, you know, people tamp it down, they literally squish it in. I'm not doing that. I'm just getting it in enough so that the plant won't fall out and the roots have something to grip to when they are going to be in here. And now that I have a plant in this pot, I am going to take this little tag off. I probably don't need this last pseudobulb that I attached the tag to, but it has some nice old root system on it to help keep it in the pot. So I think I'm going to leave it for now. So now I have a pot to put the tags in. And so this was Cattleya skinneri, and I believe it's High Tea Jacobs, which received an FCC many, many years ago. So it should be a really nice one. So now we can see that's potted up. I'm going to just hold it down right here so we can see how it's in there. You can still see there's a lot of space here in the roots where the mix is, because I'm not trying to smash it in. I just want to have it enough so that it doesn't come out and the roots can still breathe. And this is all repot. With the bifoliates, such as this Mrs. Mahler, you can really see that they climb out of the pot. So this is a plant that I got from Sunset Valley Orchids last year, and I repotted into bark. So it's a bifoliate, and also I have two of them and I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep them, and I don't like repotting things in the semi-hydro if I think I'm going to get rid of one. So I have two. They're both in bark, and you can just see how, you know, it's climbing out, right? The pot right here is just is some place for me to put the plant. The Cattleya itself, which has got two buds on it, does not want to be in the pot because it's vigorously trying to climb out of the pot right here. And I will do things like, so see this new root, I will just kind of gently tuck it back in to encourage it to grip to the bark and inside the pot, just to give it a substrate with which to live in my house, since I don't have trees for it to live on. Cattleya trianae is a unifoliate. It is also a root before a bloom. And this piece that I believe is a trianae has a little bit of new growth coming out. So the new growth is, it's probably about halfway to a full-size growth. And again, I took this piece off a big cluster of like Cattleya from Orchid Inn, and I just cut it off. So none of these roots were in the pot, and it had completely grown out of the pot. And so again, what I'm doing here is that the pot is just for me to keep it upright and to make it easier for me to grow. I'm tucking the roots just in. They don't have to be covered, but just enough to make it easier for me to handle. And again, I didn't cut the old roots, the air roots off. It's going to make new roots, as it is right now in active growth, that I'm going to use to actually keep it alive. Well, I'm not going to use it. It's going to use it to keep it alive. So here it is set in the pot. Again, I'm going to hold it on one side where I want it in the pot, and then I'm just going to pour the new bark mixture in gently. Give it a little bit of taps to settle everything in. It needs another scoop. So the other thing about having let these sit out for about a month before potting them up is that my cuts have all cured, and that means that I won't be allowing any pathogens to enter as I'm potting, because all the wounds have sealed. Just trying to do this really gently. I don't want to break off those new roots that are coming in. And then that's it. I'm keeping the plant mostly at the top of the pot. The bark is just here to help me keep it stable in the pot. It's not a media in the same sense that if I was putting in dirt for a non-orchid, it's not a terrestrial, it's an epiphyte. So here we go. And that's it. All right, this piece, it hasn't started putting out new roots yet, but I'm just gonna go ahead and pot it. Hopefully when it gets to be about half the size of these growths, it will start putting out new roots. The other thing that's really important is that, so you can see how it had started putting out some roots here and they've turned black. That's what happens if you disturb the roots too much. When you're doing it, they just die. And that's another reason I don't want to shock it too much when I pot it up. So I'm going to put it in this pot. So I'm going to see which of these pieces does better, the piece in semi-hydro, the piece in bark, because I haven't grown trianae before. But it's the same kind of idea. I'm just using the roots to hold it in the pot. I'm not expecting them to provide a lot of resources to the plant. I'm expecting them to die. I gotta get a container which to holding it to one side. It'll be firmly seated in the pot. I'm pouring over the old part, so in case there's any new growth coming out, I don't accidentally knock it off with the force of the Luca. And again, I want it just sort of right under the level of the plant. So now here you can see it all potted up and the leek is holding it in the pot. I have here a Cattleya Love Chance by Cattleya Green Emerald, and you can see it's a bifoliate, and it is basically crawling out of its pot, or it has crawled out of its pot. All the new roots are here. And so with a plant like this, I could either mount it, or if I want to pot it, what I have a tendency to do is, rather than getting rid of all the stuff that's in here, I just slide it out of its pot like so. And then I do what I call potting up. So bifoliates, if you're not going to just cut off the new growth section, and I really wouldn't want to cut this even though these are bigger, because I would only get, I'd get one pseudobulb without a leaf. Maybe this one would come with it, but I like to have 4 to 5 pseudobulbs on a division. 3 is the minimum, but I generally like to have more. And so I'll take something like this, which has got, so these are the baby pseudobulbs from when it was younger, and I'll just pot the whole thing up. So I'll just take it, I'll put it in a bigger pot gently. Now these are all live roots, so you can see all these have green tips to them. I don't want to damage them. Gently try to fit this in. It's easier to bend the roots if they're moist. These roots are a little drier, but I think I'm going to try to moisten them. So you can soak the plant, but since I'm outside and I have a hose, I am just going to spray them. Sometimes I'll spray and try to loosen any of the bark, but since I'm potting this one up, I'm going to try to disturb the roots as little as possible. So I can tell the roots are nice and soaked now because they've turned green. So this will just make them a little bit easier to bend now into the pot. Again, I'm going to hold it by the older divisions. Just put bark on top. And again, I don't want to break off that new growth that's right there. I've spilled a whole bunch into my potting tray. I'm just going to use them in here. And so now this one, you see it's kind of buried in there, got the old mix and its roots. And so now this Cattleya is just potted up. This is the last one that I'm going to do on video because I'm going to be repeating this process with a whole bunch of Sunset Valley orchid Cattleyas that I've gotten in the last year. If I don't know when they're going to start rooting, then I usually grow the orchid for about a year, and I try to catch it in its new growth when it starts out. I'm not one of those people who likes to pot a plant the minute that I get it. Or, I'm sorry, repot a plant the minute that I get it.